Lola Young there and Messi. The time now is 26 minutes past 2.
Steve Yabsley. BBC Radio Bristol.
And I am delighted to welcome you to the studio the wonderful writer and I would say historian Nuala Calvi and Betty Peachey. Hello, Betty.
Hello.
Hello, Nuala.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming in. Now, Betty has contributed to a wonderful book that Nuala has written together with her fellow author, which we'll tell you about in a moment. It's called Blitz, Kids, and it, of course, ties in, I suppose, with the VE 80th anniversary, which took place recently. It's a book of powerful, true stories from the children of wartime Britain, and one of those is lovely Betty. And the book is based on extensive interviews with those who survived the Blitz. Nuala, you're the co-author. Tell us a little bit about your other co-author.
My other co-author,
Yes.
well, he's just sitting on the other side of the window with our 9-year-old boy, and it's probably a bit jealous that I'm in here. But yeah, we've worked together for a while. We've written 6. This is the 6th book that we've written together.
Well, we should mention his name is Duncan Barrett, and your son is Leo, isn't he?
Leo, yes.
Yeah, seems like a nice lad. Yes, he's
Yes.
outside at the moment. Well, thank you very much for coming in, and particularly to you, Betty, because you're knocking on. You wouldn't mind me saying that.
No, I am.
and you've come from Bath today,
Yes.
so thank you so much for that. Let's just talk to Nuala a little bit to establish her credentials to start with. A trained journalist, you've written for many publications over the years, Times, Independent, Guardian. How did you fall into writing originally? Presumably you went to university initially, did you?
Yeah, I went to university and did English, and then I got into journalism. And then Duncan and I, our first book was called The Sugar Girls, and it was about the women that worked in the East End Tate and Lyle factories. So we kind of got into interviewing real life people about their stories, and it's kind of gone from there, really.
Yeah, indeed. You've now co-authored 3 Sunday Times top 10 bestsellers, not just The Sugar Girls, but also GI Brides and The Girls Who Went to War. In a nutshell, just tell me about those other 2 ones. What was, obviously, GI Brides were the Brits that got married to the Americans.
Yeah, well, my granny was a GI bride, and she, shortly before she died, actually, she shared her story with me, which she'd never really talked about during her life. And that inspired me to go to America and track down my family there, who I'd never met, and talk to lots of other surviving GI brides.
Wow.
And then The Girls Who Went to War was about the women's forces, so it was interviewing ladies who've been in the Army and the Air Force and the Navy, who sadly, most of them have obviously passed on now. So with this book, we're really keen to speak to the last remaining survivors of the Second World War, who are the children. So it's kind of become their moment, really, to tell their stories.
Indeed, and these are precious memories which will be going soon, because the memory goes with the person. The new book is called Blitz, Kids, together with Duncan Barrett. The book tells the story of World War II through the eyes of children, as Nuala said, and it's based on these interviews. And although you've done some in our area, you've done them all over the place, haven't you?
Yeah, well, we were really keen, because everyone knows about the London Blitz, but actually lots of other cities like Bristol and Birmingham and Liverpool and so on also suffered their own heavy bombardment, their own blitzes. So we're really keen to make sure that we spoke to people who'd had these experiences all over the country, not just in London.
Yeah, and what was interesting was that during the war, for propaganda reasons, the news of the Blitz often didn't get out to the general public. It was all they didn't want to alert people to the fact that many parts of Bristol or Plymouth or whatever had been quite badly damaged by German bombers.
That's right, because they thought it would be bad for morale, and also they didn't want to tell the Germans that they'd successfully bombed certain targets. So they would say something like a northern town has been bombed overnight, but they wouldn't say it was Liverpool, for example. And that actually got to a lot of people. They felt like their experiences weren't being represented.
Not being acknowledged, even though they went through incredible trauma.
Yeah.
I remember my nan, who's now passed on. She died at the age of 100 a few years ago, but she was a young mother during the Second World War, and she told me about pushing her pram through the centre of Bristol with flames on either side of burning embers of buildings. Very, very traumatic. Which brings us to you, Betty, because you were a little tot during the war. Just tell me first of all about where you lived during the war.
During the war, we lived in up in
Filton.
Not Clifton.
Filton.
Filton.
Yeah. Tell me about your home at the time then. What was it like?
Oh, it was just a family home in a terrace.
Yes.
And the bombs used to be coming, sirens, and it was I was too young to be afraid.
Yeah, you were just a little child at the time.
Yes, yeah.
But what actually happened to you? Because you were buried alive, weren't you?
More or less.
Yeah, tell me what happened.
Well, what happened, we had a air raid that night, and the Germans came over, bombed us, and a bomb was complete just at the back of our house, our shelter. But before we went to bed, my dad was in the ARP, and he was by the Hippodrome. That's where he was, and we were at Filton. So before he went to work, always he put a great big oak table by our door of the shelter.
Yes.
So when the bomb went off, and the crater was right behind us, when it went off, all the rubble piled up against our door.
Yes.
And the table saved our lives.
Gosh.
So we were all sort of buried. We couldn't get out. It was pitch dark. But when it happened, it was, my mother said, that everything went blood red. It was and she was thrown right across the shelter with the blast, and then it went black and dark. But Dad had heard about the bombing in Filton, so we ran all the way back from the Hippodrome to Filton, and all he saw was this great big round rubble of stone.
He must have been scared that you'd all been killed.
Well, each side of us, they were killed, both sides. So he dug us out. We got out in the end, and went up the path, because it was the bottom of the path. Went up the path and saw our house, and all that was standing was the staircase.
Wow. I mean, clearly traumatic for all of you, but the fact that you survived is the wonderful thing. Who was with you in the shelter then?
My mum, and what year was it?
I think it was your two younger brothers at the time.
Yes, two younger brothers.
Yeah. How old were you roughly?
Well, I was born in 35.
And what year was the air raid?
What time?
40. So I think you weren't yet 5. You were only 4 years old, weren't you?
Yeah.
Blimey, you don't remember being scared then?
No, we weren't frightened at all, really. I think we were too young.
Well,
You were mostly worried about your dolls because you'd left them upstairs, weren't you?
When I got to the staircase, there's a house, all there was left was the staircase. So I just was stood there crying. And they, what's the matter? I want to go upstairs to get my dolls. Because the stairs were there, and I thought I could go up,
So what happened to your family directly after that? What accommodation did you go into?
Well, we were just, I don't know, to be quite honest. We were shoved from pillar to post.
Gosh.
Yes.
What was your father's job?
He was a painter and decorator.
Blimey, he had a lot of work to do then, didn't he? Dear, oh dear.
We were shipped all over the place.
You lived in a Nissen hut for a while,
Oh,
didn't
yes. Yeah, that at Ratcliffe Bay,
Golly.
Portishead,
Yeah, I suppose you just had to put up with it, didn't you? You just had to accept it.
Yes, yeah.
It was a time of national crisis, national emergency.
We lived in huts, sheds, everywhere.
They lived in a shed with just a bucket, basically, for a while.
Yes, yeah.
Were you able to salvage much from your home at all?
No. It was completely gone.
Gosh, and as you say, your neighbours were killed on either side.
Yes.
So you were very fortunate to survive, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. But it's funny how I can remember it. I can't even remember what happened last week.
And your dad went on to find a new house eventually then, did he?
Well, we were... we never had a real house. We ended up with a council house in the end,
I see.
Then we were put in this Nissen hut in Ratcliffe Bay.
Yes.
But the council put us in there. No, it was a squatters' camp where people used to go for shelter, But they wanted the squatters out because they didn't pay or nothing, But the council put us in there with a rent of 8 shillings a week.
Gosh.
Is that 40p?
Blimey. Well, your father, he must have been so relieved, though, to discover that his family had survived.
Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, he was, yeah. He was. He couldn't believe it because he literally had to dig us out.
Yeah, I mean, the trauma of losing a home is pretty devastating as well, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Now, tell me a bit about you. You went on, obviously, to go to school in later life, and what did you make of your life? Did you work?
Yes, I went to college in Bristol. I did a catering course, and I ended up being a cook.
And you married Ron, didn't you?
Yes.
How long were you married for?
65 years.
Gosh, and when did he pass on then?
About 5 years ago, something like that.
And did you have children yourself?
Yeah, I got 3.
I see.
Yes, 2 in Cornwall, and 2 girls, and a boy in Chewstoke.
Have you got photographs of your parents? Did they survive at all?
Oh yes, yeah. They were really good, but very, very not poor, but
they weren't millionaires.
No.
But her mother had actually come from quite a famous family, hadn't she?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Mum's sister was Lady Bird from Bird's Custard.
Oh, really?
And her brother-in-law was Sir Donald Bird.
I wonder what happened to the money. You never got a slice of it, did you?
No.
Dear, oh dear. Hearing Nuala, hearing Betty's stories, it makes you appreciate the sort of gold that these people have in their memories, doesn't it?
Yes, and to think that, I don't think Betty had really talked about her story at all.
No, I haven't.
Before. And it was the same with so many of these people I interviewed. They had these incredible experiences, really quite heroic stories a lot of the time, quite traumatic stories, and they just had to get on with their lives after the war and carry on living, and just hadn't really talked about these things, most of them.
How did you find Betty and people like her for the book? How did you come across them?
How did we meet? I can't remember now.
Well, you put an article on Facebook.
Oh, that's right, on Facebook.
She was going to write a book about the people that were involved in the war of a certain age, and I thought, I was, So I contacted her on Facebook.
Gosh, you're a success just by surviving, aren't you, really? Now, I know, Nuala, there was also a Bristol woman called Audrey whose dad's grocery shop suffered blast damage. What can you tell me about her story?
Yes, well, what was interesting about Audrey was that the first night of the Bristol Blitz, so the first really big raid, she'd gone out to see a concert with her family. And it was in a converted crypt under a church, and they ended up being locked in there all night long because the raid was going on. And she was a bit older than Betty. I think she was maybe sort of around 12 or something. So for her, all she cared about was the fact she was going to miss her favourite singer doing this concert, and she was really annoyed that this air raid had ruined her night. But obviously when she got outside and saw the devastation, I think they were walking home, they could see factories on fire, whole streets had been wiped out. It really kind of hit home then how serious it was for her.
What's interesting about these memories, though, is although they bring up difficult emotions and there's a sense of loss to some of them, also many of the Blitz kids actually remember the war and the aftermath as a happy time, don't they?
Yes, that's another thing that really surprised me, actually, that was, in amongst all of this actual, violence and death and so on, that children still find a way to be children. They play with what's there. So they would take the bricks from bombed out buildings and they would build their own Wendy houses, or, they'd climb into derelict houses and play on the beams. They would find ways to have fun. Yeah. And actually they had quite a lot of freedom in those days compared to children now, even though there was a war on. So a lot of them still look back on those as the best days of their lives, which is surprising.
Tell me, Betty, about the time just after the war. What are your memories of being a young woman at that time?
What, after I went to college?
No, just after the war, when you were a child. Do you remember the bomb sites all around the area?
No, not really.
Well, fair enough. You blotted it out.
What I can remember is my mother going through the streets of Bristol with a pram with the 2 little ones. I was walking, and then they were in the pram, and then suddenly the loudest air raid went off that you could ever hear, because and then what we had to do, we had to knock on anybody's door and ask them if we could go under their stairs.
Oh, to share the space in a way.
So we did. I can always remember going in this house with the pram and the children, my brothers, under the staircase, and then we had to wait there till the all clear came.
Hearing Betty's stories, it's a real glimpse into the past, isn't it, Nuala?
That's the wonderful thing. I love my job because I get to talk to these people who, you know, each of them actually could be a whole novel, a whole book in their own right, you know. And to meet Betty, you know, you'd never guessed that she'd lived through all of these things. She's so happy and smiley and, you know, but I do think it's an amazing generation and they've lived through things that, you know, the rest of us could only imagine.
Indeed, you say that some of them woke up in the morning to find their homes and even their schools, their places of work destroyed. I mean, you had to start afresh in some cases, like Betty did, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, there are children several children in our book who lost their homes. One who lost their father in Liverpool. You know, and actually, lots of children lost their lives. Almost 8,000 children were killed during the Blitz around Britain, which is something that we forget. So children really were on the front line of the Second World War.
Indeed, many families evacuated their children to the countryside or whatever, but that didn't happen in all cases, did it, by any means?
No, and I suppose that's what we wanted to focus on with this book, because we felt that the evacuee experience has been talked about so much, and that's almost the image that we have now of children in the war is like the evacuee getting on the train, being taken to safety. But actually, you know, as Betty's story shows, lots of children were still in cities when these air raids were going on. They were alongside their parents, witnessing, you know, the bombing of their local areas, and we wanted to tell those children's stories, really.
Yeah, you must count your blessings that you survived then, Betty.
Yes, so lucky. And to be alive now, because I've had a few sort of
ups and downs
since then.
Yeah, and you've seen so much change in your life, haven't you? I mean, blimey, look at the internet coming out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, we didn't even have a radio in those days.
Lovely. Well, what a real privilege to see you today, Betty. Thank you so much for taking the trouble to come from Bath.
Thank you.
You're 89, I think, aren't you?
Yes.
So when's your 90th?
21st of November.
Oh, so later this year.
Yes.
You're going to make that no trouble, I should think.
I don't know.
Yeah, you will.
Don't trip over on the way out of the studio. A final word about the book then, Nuala, which is called Blitz Kids, written together with your partner, of course, Duncan Barrett. Just tell me, in summation, about the stories. How would you put them together?
I would say that they're stories of just ordinary children who lived through an extraordinary time, and they also sort of tell the story of the war from beginning to end, really, through the eyes of children, which is quite a unique perspective that perhaps people haven't really read about before.
Well, it's absolutely captivating stuff. The book itself, Blitz Kids, which is written by Nuala Calvi and Duncan Barrett, is published by Hodder, I believe, isn't it? And finally, Betty, you're a survivor, aren't you?
I certainly am.
At least you've made it through the interview.
I didn't think I would. A couple of days ago, I had to call 999 because I collapsed.
Oh, well, blimey, please take care. What a pleasure to meet you today, Betty. Thank you for coming in.
Lovely to meet you.
There you go. That is Betty Peachey from Bath and Nuala Calvi, who together with her partner Duncan Barrett has written that wonderful book Blitz Kids. It's a book of powerful true stories from the children of wartime Britain. It is published by Hodder.